How's it going, guys? TacTixHD here, and this video is just going to be bringing you guys my thoughts on the draft as well as the first day of Free Agent Frenzy. Obviously, a ton of stuff has happened over this past week. Thought I'd just talk about it with you guys. So, starting off with the draft, I think it more or less went how everyone thought it would. Obviously, McDavid going 1, Eichel 2, Strome 3, Marner 4, Hanifin 5. Those were the top 5. Obviously, the rest of the picks, most guys kind of went where they thought they would. Krause kind of fell to number 11. Most people see him as a late top 10 pick. Barzell also fell. Then, of course, Edmonton makes that trade for Griffin Reinhart. Boston was really busy on that draft day, trading Dougie Hamilton. Arguably their best young player, stud defenseman, going to be amazing on Calgary for a first-round pick and 2 seconds. And then they also traded Milan Lucic to core their team to LA for a first-round pick and Martin Jones. And so, they had 3 first-round picks, back-to-back-to-back, 13, 14, 15. Most people thought they'd trade those picks, probably move up or trade them for a player. They end up actually picking back-to-back-to-back, and every player they picked was projected to go lower than where they picked them. So that was really weird by Boston. I still don't understand that at all. Some other things that happened in the draft, of course, Travis Konechny kind of fell all the way to 24. Most people had him as a top 15. Maybe top 20 if he fell that far. I was hoping a trade would get him, but instead they took Evgeny Svechnikov, who's also a very good player, so happy to see what he can do for Detroit. Aside from that, though, the draft really has seen no other surprises, at least none I can think of. I'm trying to think if there's any crazy trades or anything like that, and I'm probably missing some things, but those were obviously the big things. Boston basically stealing the show. Obviously, the Oilers got Cam Talbot from the Rangers. After that, the Oilers were a very busy team. Buffalo, of course, making that big trade with Ryan O'Reilly. I thought that was a huge trade, actually. Colorado gets Zadorov, a good young defenseman, and they obviously are low on defense. They get Grigorenko, who actually Patrick Waugh coached when he played for the Quebec Ramparts. They also got a second-round pick, and then they got another prospect, and then Buffalo gets Ryan O'Reilly and Jamie McGinn. So a couple of solid NHL players. Ryan O'Reilly is actually more than solid, so it'll be interesting to see what Buffalo does, especially with adding Jack Eichel. They also traded that first-round pick for Lehner and David Legwand. So a couple of, the worst teams in the NHL are definitely trying to turn things around as quickly as possible. So it's really exciting when the worst teams are starting to get better, and even when the better teams are starting to get a little worse, the more competitive the NHL is, definitely the better. So I think that's really everything in terms of the big news from the draft day. Vancouver traded Eddie Lack, and I think there's some other not huge deals, but I want to talk about the Free Agent Frenzy, the first day of free agency that happened today. What a crazy day it's been. So I'm just going to go alphabetical order here with the NHL teams. First off, we got the Ducks. So far today, they lost Boschman, but they replaced him with Kevin Bieksa. Obviously, they traded a second-round pick for him. They also traded Emerson Edeman picks for Carl Hagelin. And then they also traded James Wisniewski for Anton Khudobin. So I think the Ducks are going to be a very solid team next year. They still have cap room too, so who knows who will assign. Plus with the trade for Khudobin, they've also got John Gibson kind of as the third string. Odd man out. He's a young goalie. I think they could definitely move him for some assets. So if they end up doing that or getting assets some other way, Anaheim's going to be another scary team in the West. Well, they're always scary in the West, but they'll be even scarier next year. Arizona's one of those teams who's definitely going for Austin Matthews next year. Really haven't done much. They took up Chris Pronger from the Philadelphia Flyers along with Nick Grossman. Simply just to get that cap. Obviously, he's not going to play. He's done forever. He's inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. But interesting to see Arizona. They're definitely stocking up picks in that. They actually just brought back Boyd Gordon from Edmonton as well as Vermette, so a couple of former Coyotes. The Bruins, like I said, they weren't done after that draft day. They also decided to go and trade away. Just recently, actually, they traded away Riley Smith with Mark Savard to Florida, and they got back Jimmy Hayes. So finally got rid of that Savard deal, kind of similar to the Arizona and Flyers Pronger deal. So that's interesting. I think that's just going to help Florida meet the cap without overpaying a player or whatever. So those deals work. I think Savard's got 2 years left. Boston frees up some cap room, but I feel like Riley Smith was probably too high a price to free up Savard's cap room, but you never know. Also, Boston made another move, obviously trading Martin Jones for a first-round pick, which is really surprising to the San Jose Sharks. Didn't think they'd actually be able to get a first-round pick back for him. So their Lucic deal actually turns into 2 first-round picks. So really solid move there by the Bruins. Another thing, guys, I guess we're moving on to the Buffalo Sabres now. Like I said, already talked about them. Drafted Jack Eichel. I see him definitely playing in the NHL this year. Ryan O'Reilly, he'll either be the second-line center or one of the top 6 wingers. Obviously, Evander Kane's coming back healthy. They got Jamie McGinn in that deal. I'm trying to think what else they did. They got Robin Lehner, of course, from Ottawa. So he's a good young goalie. Some people are saying Buffalo's going to make the playoffs all of a sudden. Definitely don't see that happen. Lehner's a good young goalie, but he's unproven. You really can't start saying playoffs yet for the Sabres, but they'll definitely be a lot more fun to watch this year. than they were the last few years. They bought out Cody Hodgson as well, who now Nashville actually signed for millions, so it's just interesting to see what happens with him. Calgary Flames, of course, already mentioned, trading for Dougie Hamilton. They also signed Michael Frolik, so they're just adding a couple more assets to that good young team. Carolina Hurricanes, I think, are going to be another team definitely trying to win the Austin Matthews lottery next year. I think them, Arizona, Toronto are trying to be the three bottom teams. Obviously, they got Eddie Lack back after trading away Anton Khudobin, or I think before trading away Khudobin. I forget which one came first, but they're an aging team. A lot of their prospects that they have are kind of like just fresh prospects, aren't really NHL ready. So don't see them doing too great this year. I think they'll definitely be starting that rebuild. Whether they move on to Stalls will be very interesting. Same with Jeff Skinner, Cam Ward. So Carolina's yes, going to be interesting to watch. Chicago Blackhawks, a huge trade yesterday, trading away Brandon Saad to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Of course, they got Armin Nisinov back, which is a big deal. He'll replace Brad Richards on that second line. They also got Mark Dano and a couple of their assets in the Columbus package, as basically they just didn't have enough room to sign Saad. Hadn't traded Sharp or Bickle yet, had no more money. Kane and Taves both got raises, so Chicago's definitely going to have to make a couple more moves here to get under the cap. But I think, they still have a solid team. They're going to be a good team every single year. Always, a competitor in the playoffs, so don't think Chicago fans have anything to worry about. Colorado, as already mentioned, trade away Ryan O'Reilly. It was a huge trade for them, but I think they got back a lot of good assets. They're staying young. They also signed Carl Soderberg after trading like a 6th-round pick for his rights. They also signed Francois Beauchemin today. It's a good veteran defenseman for them, so Colorado's going to look really good next year, I think. I don't know if they're ever going to be able to recreate that season they had 2 years ago. That was just like so many things went right for them, but I think they'll definitely be vying for a playoff spot and probably have a better chance at it this year than last. Columbus Blue Jackets, like I already mentioned, traded for I almost said Don't Be Saad, traded for Brandon Saad, and I think they made a couple other minor moves today that I'm actually just not remembering. Dallas Stars, of course, signed Antti Niemi. Really interesting what they're doing. They got like $10 million locked up in both goalies in Lettinen and Niemi, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I think they also signed a defenseman or two, but nothing major there from the Stars. The Detroit Red Wings, my favorite team. Really excited what we did today. We actually signed Mike Green. He's a right shot offensive defenseman. He can play the power play. Really excited to see what he can do. Also, we signed Brad Richards, so we get a really solid second line center there who's a veteran. Help out the young guys. Really excited for the Red Wings here. If Datsuk and Zetterberg can stay healthy all year for once, that'd be amazing, and I think we can definitely make the playoffs and hopefully, not get knocked out in this first round. Edmonton Oilers already talked about a lot. Obviously, drafting McDavid first overall is huge for them. Brought in Cam Talbot. They signed Andrei Sekera today, which is a huge deal. I think some people have him as the #1 UFA defenseman. A lot of people said it's either him or Mike Green, so that's pretty cool, I guess. Red Wings get Mike Green. Oilers get Sekera. They also traded Boyd Gordon for Luke Korpiowski. They also signed Letestu. And then they also traded for Greiba. So, I think Chiarelli's doing a lot of good things with the Oilers team. Really trying to, get that rebuild finally going. Do it the right way. Not just all, bring in actually the pieces you need. Bring in a better goalie. Fix up that defense. Of course, the Reinhardt deal was huge for them. And they haven't given away any young assets yet. Yakupov, Eberle, Draisaitl, they're all still there. So, really interested to see what the Oilers continue to do. If Nurse makes a team, things like that. I think they're going to be probably one of the most fun teams to watch this year. The Panthers, like I said, made that trade for Savard, basically just for cap. They also drafted Lawson Crouse. Honestly, I think Lawson Crouse can make the team this year. He's one of those prospects, even though he's not going to be like top-end skill like McDavid, Marner, Strome, Eichel. He's just a power forward, and he's the kind of kid that could definitely make the roster in his first year. Next, guys, moving on to the LA Kings. They obviously traded away Martin Jones to the Bruins. They kind of got screwed when he got traded back to the division to the Sharks. They signed Enroth though to replace him as the backup. They lost out on Sekera, but still a strong team, obviously bringing in Lucic, and I think they'll definitely be back in the playoffs next year. Minnesota Wild just re-signed a couple guys. They re-signed Granlund, re-signed Prosser. Nothing too flashy from the Wild. The Montreal Canadiens actually made a really interesting trade, trading Brandon Prust in a 5th for Zach Kassian. Couldn't believe the Canucks did this trade. Canucks doing a lot of strange things lately, in my opinion. Same with the Bruins, but Montreal, Kassian, if he turns out how he's supposed to turn out, he played amazing for the Spitfires back in the day. If he turns out like how he's supposed to, Canadians definitely got a steal there. Nashville Predators, another team hasn't done too much, but they did bring in Cody Hodgson, like I said, for $1 million. So if he comes back to the player that he was before, even close to it, kind of like how Ribeiro bounced back when signing with the Predators, really good value deal for them. New Jersey Devils, they made that trade for Callum Palmieri at the draft, and they also signed a defenseman today. I forget who, but they haven't been doing too much. I think they're just trying to slowly try to rebuild that team, fill it up with prospects. Their team's really old. They got Eliash, they got a bunch of old guys on that team, and no really star players. I think they're trying to slowly build that team, fill it with prospects, and get it back on the right track. New York Islanders, very interesting team. Obviously, I think they're going to make the playoffs again next year. Their first year in Brooklyn, really good, solid young team. Aside from that trade for Reinhart, which made them end up with Barzal, I don't think they've done any crazy signings today. The Rangers, again, nothing crazy, I don't believe from them. I might be missing out. The Hagelin for Edom deal was kind of strange, I think, but two similar-ish players. Hagelin's a bit older, a bit better in my opinion, but Edom's probably got a bit more upside if he eventually reaches his potential. So obviously, too, Rangers lost St. Louis, so we'll see how they replace him. And their top 60, I think someone's got to go there. There's so much money in Girardi, McDonough, Stahl, Boyle, Yandel, and Klein. I feel like one of those 6 has to go. The Senators, of course, traded away Leonard, so they got their 2 goalies now. They got a first back, obviously, accompanying Legwand with Leonard, so that just frees up more cap room for them. Really interesting to see what Ottawa's going to do. They haven't really made a splash yet, but I think they'll definitely add a couple assets. Same with the Flyers. Haven't done much. They're trying to just get rid of that cap right now. I really like their draft, though. I don't think I mentioned that. Provorov and Konechny, both in the first round. I think that's one of the best first rounds this year. Pittsburgh Penguins making the deal of the day, trading for Phil Kessel. That was huge. That just happened, I think, a couple hours ago. And honestly, guys, Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be a force next year. Even though everyone's saying they don't have depth in that. I mean, if you look at their top 6, it could work out to be something like Hornqvist, Crosby, Kessel, Kunitz, Malkin, Perron. I'm not sure if that'll be all the right positions or whatever, but that's their top 6. That is unreal. And then even their third line is going to be something like, if they're healthy, Dupuis, Suter, Bo Bennett, or something like that. And then the fourth line, honestly, at that point, who cares? Defense, you're going to have Letang, Mata, and Pouliot if he makes the team, with Ben Lovejoy, 2 other probably cheap guys. And then, of course, you got Fleury and Net, who's always a beast in the regular season, not so much in the playoffs. So Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be a crazy team to watch next year. Obviously, they're right up against the cap, and they trade away Nick Spaulding with Kessel as well as Scott Harrington, to get Kessel, but I think that's a really good trade for Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, you see how good Kessel was on Toronto with Bozak. Even though people said he wasn't good, look at the stats. He's a top 10 scorer in the league over the past 6 years. And with Crosby at center, the best player in the game, in my opinion, he is just going to be absolutely unreal. Toronto obviously gets younger, gets prospects, gets picks, but Pittsburgh Penguins is going to be incredible to watch next year. Moving on to the San Jose Sharks, guys. Obviously, they didn't make any big splashes, but they did sign Paul Martin, one of the defensemen Pittsburgh that lost. And obviously, the Sharks need a D as well. They trade for Martin Jones, who I don't really think, some people think they step up from Antti Niemi. I think Antti Niemi is kind of getting the short stick there. I think Niemi's a solid goalie, and I think if anything, he's probably on par. So the Sharks are probably going to be in the same boat they were this year, fighting for a playoff spot. The West has so many good teams. It's going to be really close. Sharks going to be one of those teams fighting for the spot. Maybe they'll get in, maybe they won't. St. Louis Blues, I don't really think they've done anything, unless I'm missing out here. I'm pretty sure they haven't made any signings, made any trades, so they're staying pat for now. There's a lot of trade talk, though, with TJ Oshie. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Same with Tampa Bay Lightning, haven't done anything. They're just staying the course. I think they lost a couple minor guys, and that's about it. Toronto Maple Leafs, like I said, made that trade for Phil Kessel, which is just unreal. They also brought in a bunch of kind of cheap guys here at the first day of free agent frenzy. They brought in Daniel Winnick. They brought in P.A. Parento, they brought in Matt Hunwick, and I believe they brought in somebody else, another just kind of cheap guy. So it'll be very interesting to see kind of what the Leafs do here if they move Phaneuf, Lupul, Bozak, guys like that. But the Leafs are definitely not going to be a playoff team next year. Definitely in on the Austin Matthews sweepstakes, but it'll be fun to watch. It's always cool to see when a team shakes up the roster that much, what happens to them. Next, guys, the Canucks, like I said, really strange to me what they're doing here. They moved Eddie Lack for basically nothing, a 3rd and the 7th. I thought they'd at least get a 2nd. Then they trade Kassian for Proust, which I don't understand at all. To me, Kassian's basically a younger Proust with more potential, who isn't, he's not as gritty, but he's a better scorer. So I don't know, I don't understand it. And then they made another weird move, Bieksa for a 2nd. I don't know, and then they trade him within the division. I don't understand Vancouver right now. I don't see them making the playoffs next year, and it's not even really because of those moves. It's more because of how much better Edmonton and Calgary and every other team in the West, especially the Pacific, is getting. Washington Capitals, really nothing to report there either. Another team just kind of staying pat. They did sign that Russian goalie in the first round, which is a big pick because a lot of people said They're not sure if he's going to go to the NHL or go to the KHL. A lot of people have him as a second-round pick, but he's supposed to have a lot of potential, so that's probably the most interesting thing with them drafting that goalie, whose name I can't remember. I'll probably be able to find it here in a second. Samsonov was his name. And finally, guys, the Winnipeg Jets obviously lost out on Frolik. They were hoping to re-sign him, but they couldn't. I believe they brought back Stafford and Toulouse and maybe one other UFA. I don't think they made any crazy trades or anything like that, but they did 2 first-round picks. So I think Winnipeg just, keeping with that patient rebuild. They've been doing it for the last 3 years, never made any crazy trades, and obviously they got swept by the Ducks. They're hoping if they make it back in the playoffs, that won't be the case this year, but I think they're doing it right. They've been slowly rebuilding their team. They have one of the best prospect pools in the NHL with Ehlers, Moresi, Comrie, so many others. So Winnipeg's going to be a very good team. I know they're supposed to win the Cup in 2018 or whatever that magazine said, so I think that could definitely happen if they continue to stay the course. But anyway, guys, that's it here. I didn't want this video to be too long, so I want to give you guys all my thoughts here on what happened at the draft last week, as well as the first day here of Free Agent Frenzy. Really exciting stuff. I'm just kind of picturing all these different roster depth charts in my mind. Just can't wait for the season to get going and see how all these players pan out on all their new teams. Obviously, there's still a ton of free agents left, so we don't even know exactly what the final rosters will be. Tons of time for trade, tons of time for young kids to actually make the NHL team. So you never know what's going to happen. Really excited. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, leave that thumbs up. In the comments, let me know just, some of the big stories, what your thoughts are on them. Would love to, have a conversation with you guys in the comments section. And besides that, guys, thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.